So I'm going to recount the tragic events of today and try to get you up to speed with the details we know. This information is obviously preliminary and we're continuing our investigation. But today, beginning in the 5300 block of Southeast End at approximately 150, an unknown offender that we now know is Jason Nightengale, black male 32, entered a garage and produced a weapon and fired shots, striking a 30-year-old male in the head while he was sitting in his vehicle. This victim was pronounced deceased at the scene. And then this offender, Mr. Nightengale, then proceeds to the 4900 block of Southeast End at approximately 2 o'clock. He enters an apartment building just randomly where he produced a firearm and just began firing shots, striking a unknown female and security guard in the building who was sitting at the desk. The victim that sustained a wound to the chest, the security guard, is deceased. Additionally, in the same building, a 77-year-old female was retrieving her mail when the male offender, Mr. Nightengale, shot her in the head, and she is in critical condition. Then at 2:45, this same male entered a building in the 5500 block of Southeast End when he goes through the back door and takes the elevator to the 19th floor. When the male got off the elevator, he sees a man he knows. Apparently some relative used to live in this building here of this suspect's. And then this man he knows, he pulls a gun on this victim. The offender then pushes the man in the apartment and demanded the keys to their vehicle, so he basically carjacked this victim and stole a red Toyota. This offender then drives this red Toyota to the parking garage and drove away. At 3 p.m., in the 9300 block of South Halstead, Mr. Nightengale, the same offender, enters a convenience store, announces a robbery, and fires shots at a 20-year-old male in the head, and shot in the head. This random victim. The 20-year-old male was transported to Christ Hospital in critical condition and was later pronounced deceased. Additionally, there was an 81-year-old female victim in that same convenience store who sustained gunshot wounds to the back and the neck, fired from this offender's weapon. This 81-year-old woman is in critical condition. Then at 4 p.m. in the 10,300 block of South Halstead, a 15-year-old female was traveling in a vehicle being driven by her mother. The 15-year-old was sitting in the rear driver's side passenger of the vehicle when the window shattered. The 15-year-old female then realized she was struck by gunfire. The 15-year-old sustained a gunshot wound to the head and is in critical condition, we believe, by this same suspect, Mr. Nightengale. And finally, at 4:45, the 24 district officers responded to a shot spotter call at Howard and Western here in Evanston, where Evanston police responded to that call. The offender had walked into a retail store in Evanston, announced a robbery, and then fled to a restaurant, this IHOP here, where he shot a female victim in the head. Evanston police engaged this suspect and fired shots, striking this offender. We believe this offender is he collapsed and he's now deceased. Let me add one more piece to this. After the fourth shooting in Chicago, this suspect returns to one of the other shooting locations in the 9300 block of Halstead. So the fourth incident was in the 10,300 block of Halstead. He returns to the 9300 block of Halstead, where investigators are working this crime scene, and he shoots at our police officers who are investigating that third incident there on Halstead before he comes to Evanston and does the attempted robbery and another shooting. Let me end this by adding a couple of things I think you might ask about. So we did have a police-involved shooting tonight, separately from this shooting spree by Jason Nightengale. Officers in that particular incident, totally separate from this incident, stopped the car. They began investigating. They engaged 4 suspects, 1 woman, 3 males. And one of the suspects, one of the offenders in the car, began shooting at our officers who were investigating this car. Officers were not struck. They returned fire and they struck one of the offenders who is now in critical condition. And so with that, I'll answer a few questions. Again, this information is preliminary, so it could change with further investigation.
How many people in total did you say were shot by Nightengale tonight?
So let me run through it again. So there's 4 Chicago incidents, 4. And then there's the one incident in Evanston from the CVS that you see here behind me to my right, and then at the IHOP behind me. So there are a total of 3 in Chicago, and we believe 2 additional here in Evanston.